Welcome to the Yorkville podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Dave Lawrence, and today we have another very special guest with us, Mr. Pete Till, who is one of our product designers here at Yorkville. Pete, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Dave.
I know that you've got a very busy schedule, and we kind of pulled you out of a bunch of things today. So again, thank you for taking the time. And what I'm going to do is just start by asking you a question that is simply that I had of interest in myself is, how did you find your way into this your vocation or this career as an engineer and designer?
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, there's kind of multiple parts to that. I'll say there's a lot of what we do here. So there's the whole engineering and design aspect of part. That's part of my job.
Yeah.
There's also the production aspect. That's a little bit separate.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's audio as well, right? So I think maybe I've got different parts to all that. So if I talk about the whole engineering and design side of things,
Sure.
that probably stems right back from when I was a little kid growing up, right? So
Okay.
it starts off with I learn how to use a screwdriver when I'm when I'm 5 years old or whatever, and I start taking apart my toys, right? Which isn't a big problem at first,
No.
But then in the garage when you've taken apart your dad's lawnmower and all of your siblings' toys.
Oh boy.
Yeah, a bit of a problem there, right? So definitely did lots of that, and I guess fairly early on, my dad kind of saw what was happening, and he built me a workbench, right? So,
oh, cool.
So now I can actually make things on my own without destroying everybody else's things, right?
Right, and at least you're making things and not destroying them.
Yeah, that's a big step, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I did a lot of that. After I started making my own things, the earliest things I did would be I'd make remote control airplanes, remote control boats, and things like that. I really like doing.
Wow.
Starting just from a kit that you could buy, and I did that once or twice, and then I kind of did my own thing, right? So I would sort of design my own airplane and my own boat. The first ones, were complete failures, right? And
so basically, you started by designing, model kits, those types of things, right?
Yeah.
So RC cars and that type of thing. It was mostly planes though, or cars?
Mostly planes and boats.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So so when I did my first plane, it was I guess my first plane that I designed was started off as part of a kit, and then I ended up modifying it, and it was a float plane. Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was, I thought I had a reasonable handle at that at a young age, and it turns out, I did not, right? So, I spent all this time and, and energy making this float plane, and it took off beautifully, right? So the flight was great, and, come on to do the landing, and the floats caught the water, and the whole thing exploded, and it was terrible.
Disintegrated upon landing.
Yeah. So I did it again, and then the second time it went a little better, and that's kind of how it went, right?
So you could fly the plane, you just couldn't land the bugger.
Could not. Well, it was the faulty design at first, right?
Oh, okay. Of course.
I had to learn more about that, right? And and get a little better at that, and
very cool.
That's kind of the things that I was involved in, in the early days with.
So what age would you say that started at roughly?
Well, it starts it started right when I was really little. When I was doing more building with the airplanes and the boats, I guess I would have been maybe 9 years old then, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, something like that.
So you started that pretty early then.
Yeah, it's always been an interest,
That's incredible. And so what I find fascinating about that too is because you would have been working with electronics right away to build those devices, obviously.
The whole thing. So there was electronics, and there was mechanical, and for sure, the whole thing. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So when this started to take place and you then started to build models that, or planes that you could land, and that wouldn't disintegrate upon landing, what was the next step of evolution after that, would you say?
Well, in regards to the things that I was making, I would make different kinds of things, and it's just a hobby, right? So I always, I always liked doing that, and it really just stemmed from that, and I love doing it,
Very cool.
I'll get later on, and it rolls into the audio thing as well, right?
Sure.
But that's kind of how I got my roots, both designing and building things, learning how to use basic tools, and learning how to, the first things you need to know to get into design.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now, I mean, so that's kind of how I got started on the design end of things, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to production, that's a different beast entirely, right?
Sure.
So making one of something is obviously very different from making, hundreds or thousands of something.
Of course.
So how I got started in that, again, this is this would have been my first experience, is so this would have been grade 6, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. So so in grade 6, you go to school, and all the kids at school had yo-yos, right? So that was the thing for grade 6. So the coolest thing, everybody did yo-yos and whatever, right? Probably only lasted like 3 months or something.
Sure.
But you know how it always was,
as all
right?
trends go with children. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So our whole school, and not only our school, but all the other schools, everybody was having a blast and doing fancy tricks with the yo-yos or whatever, right? So I did too, right?
Yeah.
And you could buy yo-yos everywhere. You could buy them at Dufferin Games at the Pickering Town Hall Center. And,
I remember that.
Yeah, you could buy them at the dollar store and all these places, right?
Yeah.
But you couldn't buy yo-yo strings anywhere.
Oh.
And if you did, they were like absurdly expensive. You'd spend like $10 on 3 of them or something like that, right?
Really?
Yeah. So that's I made my own, which is really easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you go and you buy the right type of string, and you spin the string and you fold it in half and tie the end, and you've got a yo-yo string, right?
Right.
Super easy to do. So I made my own. And sure enough, everybody, all my friends at school, they don't have them as well, and they don't have the $10 to go get them. Okay, so I'll make you one, right? And then I figured, okay, well,
wow.
I can't be buying all this raw material, so I'm going to charge you $1, right?
Wow.
So you give me $1, I'll give you a yo-yo string, So I did that, and I started making like a lot more of them, and then of course it was my class, and then it was their friends from other schools, and I started making like a ton of them.
Wow.
And then it was too much, right? So fairly early on in that process, I made a machine, which is fairly simple. So what it ended up being, it was some electronics and some mechanical. You ended up pressing a button. There was a timer.
Okay.
Spun a motor for a particular amount of time, which was about right. You have to spin the string first.
String, yeah.
And then there was a little jig that I unclamped it from the motor, folded it across. And then, again, you tie off the end, you have a yo-yo string.
Wow.
So instead of taking, a few minutes to make one, it took like seconds now.
Whew.
And I can make a lot more of them.
So you started by, like, your foray into production began by chopping yo-yo strings in the schoolyard.
Chopping yo-yo strings in the schoolyard, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I kind of got a kick out of that. It was kind of cool. I was proud of my little machine I made, and I could make lots of them, right?
Did you have a name for it?
No, I didn't. No.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The Pete Till yo-yo string maker,
yeah,
whatever, right?
101.
Yeah, 101, right? And yeah, so I could make a lot of them. So from there, I wanted to make more, right?
Okay.
So I phoned up Dufferin Games, and I said, I've been selling yo-yo strings, and you don't have any for sale. You have yo-yos for sale, and it looks like you're selling a lot of them. I bought one from you.
Okay.
Do you want to buy yo-yo strings from me, right? So they said, yeah, absolutely. We'll take. It was 800 of them they wanted at first, right?
Wow.
So I said, yeah, no problem. So 800 on Saturday, and then I hung up the phone. And I said, how am I going to make 800 of these, right?
Right.
So I called up a couple of my friends and taught them how to use my little machine, and they helped me make them, right?
So you started shift work in your garage.
Yeah, shift work in my bedroom. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Pete started a small production facility within his own home. And you were how old when this happened?
It was grade 6.
Grade 6.
Yeah, grade 6.
Wow. Okay. And you managed to crank out the full 800? Was that it?
So
this is where this story gets interesting.
That's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
So from there, it's coming up. It's Friday now, and I've got to deliver them on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So they wanted me to bring all 800 there on Saturday, and this is the opening order, right? So they're not going to buy too many of them at one time.
Right.
So he said, come and see me, at Dufferin Games on Saturday, and bring them. And we have a guy in who's demoing our yo-yos, and he's going to test the strings. And if he likes them, I'll buy them from you. And if not, then we're not going to be interested. So I said, okay, no problem.
Wow. So
that's fine.
You had a yo-yo pro test these things out.
Yeah, there was a guy at the store that was all day. He was just doing yo-yos and whatever.
Wow.
Right? Just in order to sell the yo-yos.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was down with that, right? So it was Friday, and I made all of them. It doesn't like I said, the cycle time to make these things, it was down to seconds, right? It was maybe 8 or 12 seconds. It didn't take very long, so you can make a lot of them. But I didn't have any packaging, right?
Oh.
Yeah, so that was my problem. And it's Friday, and I gotta be there on Saturday.
Yeah.
And my parents have no idea what I'm doing, right? And
so wait a minute. This is all done without their knowledge.
It's on the sly.
It's all on the sly. So you have this back alley production facility going on.
Essentially, that's what it was.
Under your parents' noses. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that happened, right? But I needed help with the packaging. So, I got to fess up, right? I can't pull it off.
So you got to come clean to mom.
I got to come clean, right?
Okay.
So I go to my mom, right? So, I just tell her what's up. And, I don't know, I'm like pretty sure I'm gonna get in trouble or something, maybe, right? So they're like, okay, so I need help with something. I've got, I got to go to different games and sell yo-yo strings. And they're like, what? Like, what are you talking about, right? So I tell them the whole story, and I've been selling them at school and whatever, and this and that. And,
so they weren't even aware of you doing this in the schoolyard either.
No.
Oh wow, you went underground right from the beginning.
It was underground with the yo-yo
That's
strings.
amazing.
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
So
I love it.
So I come clean, and then I didn't get in trouble, right? So that's fine. And then my mom kind of realized, okay, so you need help with packaging. So I'll go help you with packaging, right? And we end up printing something off, buying some special paper, and putting them in a bag and whatever, right? So
as the cool stuff that moms do.
Yeah, there you go, right? Yeah. So she stepped up, right?
Awesome.
And we figured it out, and then I go on Saturday to different games, and then when I get there, they realize I'm in grade 6, right? And the store manager got a kick out of that and called some people over, and it's kind of embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
But then
so they were under the impression that you were an adult when you spoke to them.
I suppose it turns out, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I show up, and he gets a kick out of it, like I said, and my question is, so are you gonna buy my yo-yo strings, right?
And he's moved right into sales from here, folks.
Yeah, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
So he did like he said, right? So there's a guy there, and he tried him out, and I hung around the mall for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Went and got a Cinnabon or whatever, right? And
did the thing.
Came back, and he said, yeah, they're great, they're fantastic, they're more reliable than what we're using right now. So we'll buy your yo-yo strings, right?
Awesome.
So I said, fantastic. So we did the deal. It's all good, right? And he said, and we'll take more next week, and they wanted 2,000 of them, right?
Oh man.
So I said, okay, great, thank you, right? So that week I ended up, I wanted to go back to the store and see so are they selling them? What's going on? So I ended up going to the store, and of course, our packaging that we worked super hard on, they tore that off, right? Put it in their own packaging.
Right. So they designed their own generic marketing for it.
There you go, right? Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Anyway, so then I had to get busy, making the next batch for different games.
Of 2,000.
And then I figured, already, I've got this machine that I made, and I've got my friends that are willing to help, and I was paying them, right?
This is incredible. Okay.
So, so everybody was happy, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, okay, so there's 2,000 for next weekend, maybe we can make more, right? So I called the dollar store, and they said, and at that point in time, I had a bit of a backstory. I said, so, I've been making them for a while now. I sold them to different games. Are you interested in buying them? And he said, yep, we'll take 5,000 of them.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So now you're at 7,000.
I couldn't make that many.
Right. Unless you built another machine.
Yeah, well, but I've already got, okay, so if I got another machine, there was one person that was operating the machine, another person that was tying them, another person that was counting them, and I was organizing them on the back end.
Wow.
So, I'm not going to find 10 people to help me, right?
No, yeah.
That's about as much as it gets.
Sure.
So we produced additional 2,000 for different games. We phoned the dollar store back. We said we can't make 5,000. I think it was another 2,000 we made. So we made 4,000 for that weekend, and then shortly after that, the whole yo-yo thing ended up dying off, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I called the dollar store back, and they said, oh, well, this whole thing, there's been a shortage of yo-yo strings, and they said, we've got another source that's less money, so we're happy, buying from them. I said, okay, great. And then that was it. So.
Oh, wow.
But still, I made quite a bit of money as somebody in grade 6. It was a good experience.
I was just going to say, and not only that, but at such a young age, if you look at what you're doing now, in terms of your professional occupation, at such a young and formative age, you managed to learn everything from the very back end of planning and production and organizing logistics on an assembly line, if you will, because that's what you had going up in your bedroom, clandestinely, unbeknownst to mom and dad. But you managed to learn that end of it all the way through to the design, to the production, and then the final marketing and sale of it.
Yeah, the whole thing was great fun. I had a blast doing it. It was good.
And in a sense, you could think of it now, it's kind of prepared you for the road you ended up going down as to where you are now.
It was my first experience with production, right?
Amazing. Yeah. And so let's use this as a perfect segue to then start asking you this. From grade 6 yo-yo tycoon or yo-yo string tycoon, and you've evolved out of that in terms of your college education or just your regular education, that's one thing. But now you find yourself here at Yorkville. And how long have you been here total?
I've been here 13 and a half years,
Okay.
and it was a long time, if I could speak a little bit more about my, some past experiences.
Yeah.
So I kind of covered two of the things there, right? So that was the getting into design and getting into production, right?
Sure.
Audio is a whole other thing on its own, right? So really, my earliest experiences with that is so I play drums. That's like my first instrument, right?
Outstanding.
And kind of how that started, if I can speak to that, is
of course.
I went to, and again, this actually would have been in grade 4.
Whoa.
So in grade 4, I went to some sort of recital, that my to go watch my sister play clarinet.
Yeah.
Whole family went out, right?
Yeah.
And there was a whole band playing. They played for an hour, and it was good. And then afterwards, my parents asked me the question, okay, so in another 2 years, you're gonna have to play an instrument. Like, what instrument do you want to play, Pete?
Oh wow.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So I said, I want to play drums, right? So and it's kind of cool. Like, I can't see why you wouldn't want to play drums. So there's like
Sure.
a whole bunch of people up there, and the drummer's got this massive drum kit around. It looks super cool, right? So that's what I want to do, right? They said, okay, well, there's a big band, and there's there's 8 people playing clarinets and a bunch of people playing flutes, and there's only one drummer. So like, what other instrument do you want to do, Pete? Right? And I said, no, I definitely want to do drums. And they said, yeah, but you might not get to. So like, what's your other
Option
instrument?
2?
Option 2 is kind of what they were asking, right? And I said, oh well, like I'm only in grade 4. A couple years we start up. So if I start now, then I could probably be the guy that plays drums, right?
Right.
So I started,
looking ahead. As you would.
I suppose, right? So I started taking lessons, right?
Yep.
Started on the snare drum. I got a snare drum, and that's probably the way most people start, right?
It totally is. All too familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I migrated to the drum kit, and kind of the first style of music that I played was funk. Lots of fun playing funk drumming, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of where my roots are as a musician. And I had a great teacher. It was a good experience. I did that for a couple years.
Who's your teacher? Do you remember?
I don't remember his name.
Oh, wow.
So during this time, I lived in the States. So
where were you?
it was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh wow.
Just outside Atlanta, Marietta.
And if you don't mind me asking, how'd you end up down there?
So
In Marietta?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
sure.
grew up. Oh, you know Marietta.
Yeah, of course.
So I grew up in Pickering.
Yeah.
And we ended up moving there for a couple years. My dad got a job there, and off
okay.
we went. So it was like I guess it was a 2-year contract. So the whole family lived there for 2 years. And then we liked it in Canada, so we moved back to Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my drum teacher, I started that whole process in
In Georgia.
Yeah, in Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is that in Atlanta, Georgia, there's a number of very, very prolific drummers who've come out of that city.
Yeah, that's
area,
right. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And in that community itself is very well known for drumming, especially the whole gospel chops movement.
Yep.
That's really, really based out of Atlanta itself. So, and no wonder that you'd find yourself an outstanding teacher down there. And because I was thinking to myself, how does a kid from Pickering pick up funk right away? And then that's the first place you go.
I didn't have a choice in the matter. So
that was
he
even
was
better.
He was a funk drummer, and
Amazing.
that's the way it was, right?
Amazing.
So like I was willing to learn anything.
Cool.
Like I wasn't specific about the kind of music I
Right.
wanted to learn, and this guy was like a great funk drummer. So like that's
Awesome.
and I loved it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So then you obviously play an instrument, as many of us at Yorkville do, obviously. And then from drumming, you evolved out of that into, I would guess, looking more towards electronics or recording or engineering, or where did that go from?
Well,
there?
I got into all that. So I mean, from drumming, again, a few years I did that on my own, and I guess it would have been in grade 8.
Yeah.
I started playing in bands. Right.
Cool.
And
as many of us do.
Love that.
Yeah.
And we played like 70s rock, and we played like 90s rock.
Wow.
And had a blast doing all that, right? And we played our own stuff, and we played covers, and this whole thing, right? There's somebody that works here actually that I used to play with. Started back. Yeah.
Who?
Cam Waters. So
really?
I played with Cam since grade 8, right?
Cool.
Yeah. So like
shout out to Cam.
Shout out to Cam. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we had lots of fun doing that, and from that, so that was that would have been my first band I was in grade 8 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And from there, we start playing some shows, and more in high school we did a lot more of that, right?
Sure.
And the big problem when you start playing shows is you gotta get started in PA, right? So I kind of took that on. That was my thing, right? So So I
Why
would
does
do.
the drummer always get stuck doing the PA?
It's true, they do. I don't know why. You as well.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing.
It seems to be the case.
Yeah.
No idea what's going on.
I guess they figure we're hauling so much crap.
So
with
what does
us,
it matter? Like
yeah,
an extra,
an extra couple of speakers and some power amps. They might as well throw it in the station
Yeah,
wagon.
why not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the origin of that is, but it happens, right? So
Cool.
So anyway, so I got involved in PA,
Mm-hmm.
right? And from there, of course, okay, so we play our own original songs, and we want to record the songs, right?
Yeah.
So our first experience with that, we went to go basically look for somebody who could record our music.
Okay.
Something that's not like wildly expensive, because we don't have like any money,
Because back then it wasn't so readily available to everybody, where you couldn't just.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So we went looking. We went to a bunch of places, and we ended up at a place. I think it was called Morph Productions.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in Toronto, called Morph Productions, and that went well, right? And he did a great job. It was great working with this guy.
Yeah.
And in the end of it, of course, you listen to it, the album that we recorded, and like I couldn't help but think like, okay, like it sounds good. Like I like how it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like we sound good. The playing was fine, but like it didn't quite capture the sound that we were going for, right?
Got it.
So that kind of. That's where I got started in recording, right?
Right. So it was almost basically spurred by the desire to better your own sound.
Absolutely, it was, right?
Yeah.
So like when we were there again, like the recording sounded good. The guy did a great job, but
Sure.
it just didn't capture the sound that we wanted.
Didn't
right?
capture the vibe that you guys had, or you were
exactly,
shooting for.
that we
Yeah.
were shooting for, right?
Yeah.
So I got involved in recording at that point in time, and you start small and you build it up, and then it's not good enough, and you get more
Mhm.
microphones and this
Mhm.
and that and whatever. I ended up migrating to Cubase. That's when I got started in Cubase, and that's like a big snowball that rolls down the hill pretty quick. And,
Of course.
And we ended up recording another album ourselves, and I did some recording for some other bands, to earn a bit of money while I was going to school and
Sure.
stuff like that, and that's kind of how I got started, started in audio. So it was really it was I played drums, I did the PA, I got involved in recording, and I play some other instruments now too. So again. When I was playing in bands, I played drums, but I kind of had the desire to write music as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I really started playing guitar in order to write music.
Of course.
Yeah.
Very
And Cam and I wrote a lot of music together, and that was lots
Oh,
of fun.
wow.
And we're doing it right now again too. We just kind of started up again,
So it's all come full circle again.
full circle. That's right. Yeah.
Pretty cool. So with that being said, you've been here for how long? You said 12 years? Close to that?
13 and a half years. Yeah.
Okay, so 13 and a half years. And when you began at Yorkville, where did you actually start when you came in here?
So when I came in here, I
Mhm.
started in test and repair. So
Okay.
I was on the production floor.
Yep.
Testing units, right? When I first got the job here, it was there was like a big snowstorm, right? So it was my first, or it would have been my first interview. So I had 2 interviews here,
Mhm.
and there was a ridiculous snowstorm. I didn't have a car. I had to like walk here from like a million miles away, right? And it was like it was a worse snowstorm within a few years. Like it was definitely a terrible snowstorm. And I'm walking down Granite Court,
Mhm.
and a car like spins out right in front of me, and like literally almost takes me out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and went up on the curb, and like maybe like a foot and a half away, just right in front of me, almost takes me out. So I'm like a little bit shooken up.
Oh, wow.
And so is this woman in this car, right?
Yeah.
So and she's kind of frozen. I knock on her window. I'm like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And she like didn't say anything at first.
She was
and,
catatonic.
yeah,
basically.
completely,
Yeah.
right? So I knocked on the window again. I said, "Are you okay?" And she kind of nodded like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And we kind of
Whoa.
figured we were both okay. So I said, "I got to go to a job interview," right?
Yeah.
So off I went or whatever, right? And the interview went well, and I ended up in test and repair.
Very cool.
Yeah, I worked there for, I guess it was a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to the production engineering department.
Okay.
Yep. Worked there again for about 2 years, and then I moved to the design lab.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty quick progression for you then, and as often goes here at Yorkville.
I suppose it was, yeah.
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 Very cool. And so with that being said, what was the first project you actually worked on here?
First
If you
project.
can remember.
Well, like you get when you're in production engineering, you work on several projects at one time,
Mhm.
and you do little updates to many things.
Mhm.
So like it would have been the majority of the products that we were manufacturing at the time would have been my first ones,
Okay,
right?
What
In the
stands
design-
out to you?
Oh, it's everything, right? So it's
Yeah.
like an M810, M1610. There was the
Okay.
power amps we were doing, like
Yep.
it was everything, right?
Yep.
When I migrated to the design lab, one of the earliest ones I suppose would have been the NX25P.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very popular loudspeaker, a powered loudspeaker. And so that was one of the first things that you put a lot of focus yourself into and in the development of?
Yes. Yeah.
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 And how did that come about?
Actually, so that came about when at that time there was a little bit of a lull in sales at Yorkville Sound,
Okay.
and there was a bit of an issue we had where we had too much labor in the factory.
Okay.
And those weren't great times, right?
Mhm.
You probably remember that.
Mhm.
And we were making a big effort to reshore a lot of our products. So the
Yeah.
NX25P was part of that. So the NX25P was actually a product that was being made offshore.
Yep.
And we sold a lot of them. So we wanted to reshore that.
Bring it home.
Bring it home. And it was a big challenge because really, it's not enough. It's not good enough to start building it here, but we have to build it here for the same cost,
Sure.
And that was the challenge.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so then that becomes like the sourcing of materials, raw materials and components to make these things.
It was that, and it was other things. So like really we weren't able to make anything quite as low cost as that.
Sure.
Right. And again, that was the challenge. So normally we make something with many circuit boards as a power supply and a power amp and a front end circuit board, and requires a little bit more labor to connect them all together, and so on and so forth. There might be a heat sink in there, and there might be a chassis and other metal work, and it can be fairly complicated, right? And the whole goal here was to simplify the whole process. So instead of having 3 circuit boards, you have 1 circuit board. And instead of having a heat sink and a chassis, well, maybe the chassis can be the heat sink, and on it goes, right? And if you do that, enough, you can drive down the cost, down to where it needed to be, in order to pick up work at our factory.
So basically, it was okay. We need to bring this thing home. So let's strip it down, Pete. How are we going to do that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was the goal. Yeah.
Wow. And in terms of that, how long did that kind of process take you? Do you remember?
Oh, for the NX25P,
Yeah.
going back maybe.
Because this is a pretty landmark product, if you think about it, right? That we're talking about. This is sold by and large, like far and wide across this country and throughout the continental United States and even into Europe as well.
Sure. Yeah.
So with this being said, that process of sourcing all this stuff and stripping it down without compromising the quality of it, that must have been quite the challenge.
Well, and it wasn't even that. So in the end, it's not that we ended up, coming up with a product without compromising quality. It was better quality, right?
Yeah,
so,
it was.
It ended up it was an increased power level compared to what we were buying, and it was more performance.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So so we accomplished that goal. The whole process maybe took, maybe about 8 months, something like that.
So the better part of a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, for the folks watching at home or listening to this on their podcast devices, is that about an average kind of a production scale or length, or was that kind of exceptional because of the fact that we had to bring that back across the ocean and put it in our own place here?
The average would probably be closer to a year.
Really?
Yeah.
So remarkably, that was done in less time.
It was a little less time than average, perhaps.
And was that because of the urgency for reshoring the product, would you say?
It was due to several reasons. So,
Okay.
that was a factor, right?
Yeah.
But also, that was one of the first projects I was involved in the design lab. So, like, just getting into it, I had a lot of time. I could dedicate all my time to that, right?
Yeah.
So that was a factor as well,
Wow.
right? And many things,
Wow. Okay. And so this, again, done in a crunch. However, not only did we reshore it and repurpose it, but we also made it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and far improved it, which is why that product spoke for itself for so many years. Obviously.
Sure, yeah.
Very cool. So here's my question for you. When you put that much kind of time and that much effort into something like that particular project, what's it like to actually see the first one roll off the assembly line?
Oh, it's good. It's always a good feeling. And there's like a whole bunch of milestones there, right? So like when you get the first prototype, that's another milestone. So you've had this idea, and you've worked on it, and you've done a lot of CAD work. There's a lot of PCB layout and other design work that goes into that, and then you build the first one, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be little issues with that, and you're going to want to fix this and, reanalyze this part of it and whatever. But, that's the first milestone that, you get back. This is the good feeling that you get, that you've accomplished something, right?
Sure.
And then again, when you get closer to a finalized design, that's another great milestone. And then hitting the production floor is again, another milestone, right?
So there's kind of like the way you just broke it down for me, Pete, is like there's almost 3 different stages to it, where you're going from the first prototype of it, and then an actual working model, and then the production run of it.
Yeah, there's kind of 3 stages. So the first stage you can almost think of as like a confirmation, prototype, right? So like, is this idea going to work? Is there's this uncertainty in the project and that uncertainty in the project, and that this first stage, that's the goal, is to remove these big uncertainties, right?
Sure.
And then the second stage is essentially getting it to a finalized design. There's a lot of testing that goes on during that time, right?
Yep.
And you find other things, and those things are what you fix during the second stage.
Yeah.
And then getting the design ready for production is kind of the final stage. And our internal process is more complicated than that, but that's a rough outline of
Sure.
of
Yeah,
the process.
trying to break it down for the average person to be able to kind of wrap their head around it, because we're in a very unique position here, which is going to kind of bring me to my next question. And with very few exceptions, we can pretty much do everything under one roof here at Yorkville.
Yeah, we do a lot under this roof, for sure.
Yeah. And there's not much that we don't have access to in this facility.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, with that being said, what are the advantages for someone like yourself in doing it? Do you find that that's like an improvement on timelines, or just less stress for you as a designer and engineer because everything is right there? Like, you don't have to send it out somewhere and then please hope that it comes back the way you wanted it? Or
There's a whole bunch of advantages, really, right?
so give me your top 3.
Oh, like it's there's so many advantages, right?
I'm going to make this tough for you, Pete.
So I mean, one of the advantages is like the whole production flow is a huge advantage to bringing it in-house. So I mean, if you're going to, like, a lot of companies will outsource certain functions, like they'll outsource their metal work, right?
Yeah.
So you'll order them and they'll come in. They don't always come in when you want them to, and if there's an issue, you don't find out about it until later, and so on and so forth. So these can be huge problems in production.
Sure.
Whereas if it's in-house, you can do a first article inspection immediately right after you produce your first 5 samples, and you've got a lot more control on that, and you can produce them at a rate that you need them, and it simplifies that whole process, right?
Amazing.
Another advantage is if it's a process we have in-house, we understand the process, we understand the constraints very intimately, and we can design under that, right? So if we know all this, it makes the design process easier because we understand the constraints. So that's another huge advantage to bringing it in-house.
Amazing.
And then again, bringing it in-house, we employ a lot of people here, right? And the more we can do, all of the design and manufacture in-house, the more people we employ too. So it's all good things, right?
Yeah, it's all gravy, literally, because we're keeping more Canadians employed. So we can't, nobody can complain about anything like that.
Right.
And with that, there are obviously the clear advantages that we have. Do you find that there are any disadvantages to that process, having everybody in the same building?
Well, I mean, it can be a little bit more of a complicated design process if you do everything in-house, because there's a little bit more to take care of.
Okay.
Like, it would be nice to be able to send a drawing out and you get back, exactly what you asked for, and that's fantastic, right?
Sure.
So it requires a little bit more work, but I wouldn't call that a disadvantage. Like, it's fun doing that work anyway. So
of course.
So no, I don't really see any advantages. It's better to do it in-house.
Yeah. So with that being said, having everything under this one roof is clearly a win-win situation in pretty much every case, obviously.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of things to watch for. So if you bring it in-house, you've got to be cost competitive, still. So you have to take care of everything, right? So it has to be done efficiently. You got to have the right machinery. There's a cost associated with that, right? And but as long as you do all those things, it's all a bunch of advantages.
Amazing. So here we're going to kind of move on into something that's, I guess, a little bit more timely, should I say. Compared to our previous podcast, as the folks and the viewers at home can probably see, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening, you probably obviously won't see it, but we're sitting at a table now, which is clearly 6 feet long and 6 feet apart. And we are now in the strange time of social distancing. And this is all new to everybody.
A very strange time.
It is. And it slightly affected our facilities here for a while, and as it has everybody globally.
Well, it drastically affected our facilities here, yeah.
And one of the things that has basically spurred and helped us along here, and that I found was absolutely fascinating, is the fact that Yorkville itself, despite the fact that we're a pro audio company, we've managed to basically assist in this I guess war against this invisible enemy that we call the coronavirus or COVID-19 now. Let's just cut to brass tacks and say, basically, we've been asked to assist in developing ventilators. Is that correct?
Yeah, specifically, we're building the user interface module for the ventilators. Yeah.
So in the face of a global pandemic, Yorkville, not only as a pro audio company, has now managed to become a global citizen in a sense, or at least a national citizen, in assisting to build these devices that are helping people hopefully to get better when they fall very ill. How do you feel about that, and yourself being able to become part of that?
As terrible as the situation is, it at least feels good to be productive, and try to help out, right? However we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't feel as though, because one of the things that I think a lot of people have experienced during this whole thing is that inherent and strange feeling of almost helplessness in all this. And I find that as an employee here at Yorkville, to know that we're doing something at least even so minutely to be able to make, you said it was part of the circuit interfaces that we're helping?
User interface.
The user interface, sorry. At least we are assisting and making this somewhat better for tomorrow, hopefully, for some people, and making a difference. That must have quite a profound effect on yourself as well, too, I would imagine, would it not?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's good to help in any way we can, right? Yeah. And our whole company is involved in the project, and everybody's doing a good job with it. Yeah.
So you think that we've actually evolved not only just in terms of our facilities itself, but as a company, our facilities or maybe our processes have improved as a result of this as well too?
Oh, absolutely, they have. Essentially, we're a manufacturer of audio equipment, and we've transitioned to a medical device manufacturer. The whole process of designing a medical device like a ventilator, it's typically a very long process. Yeah. So the design cycle, on a ventilator is usually 2 years, right?
Wow.
And then the confirmation and approval process is usually an additional year. So it's normally a 3-year process.
Wow.
Right? And in this case, it's been, a short number. It's been a few months. Right?
So we've been granted the ability to accelerate that process.
Oh, we've certainly contributed to that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that's a major step on our part, on the part of Yorkville, to be able to contribute to that and hopefully assisting in that so that more people can get the equipment that they need.
Right.
Because that's been a big part of the problem with this whole thing in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, was that anything from not enough hand sanitizer to not enough face masks and at the time not enough ventilators. So we're even able to contribute to that. Are you able to speak to how this came about?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting, really. So early days, right when things were starting to get really bad, and the time that every day was like this whole new set of information, and
sure.
this is happening, and now that's happening, and the next day it's that was a period that went on quite a long time, right? Mm-hmm. So right in the middle of all that, there was a call out to industry to help with the situation, right? However you can, and I also heard that there were some manufacturers that were going to try to make ventilators. Now, based on what we can do here, I knew we could help with that. Right. So I actually went to Steve Long, the owner, and asked him basically I said, I think we can help out with this, and based on what we can do here, we can make user interface modules. And do you want me to look into this? Right. There was me and a couple other engineers that were asking him, and he said yes.
Outstanding.
So we kind of started reaching out to some companies that seemed like were involved in this project, and some current medical device manufacturers already, and that's kind of started there. On the other end, the project that's leading this, or the company rather that's leading this project, is Starfish Medical.
Okay.
And they were sort of in the early stage of their design. They were sort of trying to find a good starting point, and their design was based off of something called the Winnipeg Ventilator. Okay. Which was a product that was available a long time ago. I think this is going back maybe 30 years ago, or maybe a little bit more than that. the principal designer flew to Winnipeg to speak with the original designer of the Winnipeg ventilator, right? And I guess they went over lots of things there. And I saw a picture of this device from 30-something years ago. And you look at it, and, you know, it looks like a mixing console. It looks like a mixing console. Yeah, it does. You know, something that we make, right?
Yeah.
So sometime in that process, they had the same thought, right? And they thought maybe a company that makes mixing consoles can help us, you know, with the user interface module, you know, for this project, right?
Incredible.
So they contacted one of the local L&Ms, I think it was in Vancouver, right?
Okay.
And said, yeah, go ahead.
Pause for the cause here for a moment. So Starfish Industries?
Yeah.
Starfish Medical, sorry.
Yeah, Starfish Medical, yeah.
A Canadian company.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so 2 Canadian companies working hand in hand in this.
Yeah, that's right.
And their Winnipeg ventilator, this has been used, I would imagine, worldwide?
I believe it has been used worldwide, you know, and I don't know too many things about the original design,
That's fine.
right?
Yeah. But no, I just found it fascinating that it's actually 2 Canadian companies that are contributing to this in 2 completely different industries.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, it is interesting.
But it's amazing how when you think about it, in the face of this type of adversity, people pull together. Right?
Absolutely.
And it's not only in terms of with each other as neighbors, but also, as you can tell, with different businesses and different companies in completely different industries coming togetger to make something happen.
Well, throughout this whole project, we saw examples of what you just said repeatedly, you know.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding. So go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, so what I was saying is, so they contacted one of their local LMs
in Vancouver.
And asked, you know, I guess they asked who they would speak to, you know, if they want to. They essentially at that point in time they had some questions about the design and parts availability and things like this. And it seems like, you know, what they were concerned about are, okay, so if you guys are involved with manufacturing mixers, you've got a lot of experience doing that. Are there any, you know, reliability concerns or input you can have into the design to make what we're currently designing more reliable? And that was kind of their starting point, right? And it seems like they were perhaps reaching out to lots of companies about this, right?
Okay.
Just getting as much information as
they were just casting lines, basically.
Big time, right? Yeah. As you would, right?
Sure.
So the person at the Long McQuaid ended up calling head office in Pickering here, spoke to somebody here who forwarded the call to Steve, right? And then since this is something that, you know, I was kind of starting to look into as well, Steve forwarded an email to myself, you know, and it all kind of went from there, right?
Oh, wow.
But that whole process of, you know, them contacting the Long McQuaid and so on and so forth, it took about 10 minutes, right? So they forwarded the call, and then he forwarded the call, and the whole thing happened super quickly, right? Yeah, so everybody reacted really fast to it, right?
Amazing.
And you know, and we got started talking about the parts that we have available and that we could offer, you know, to help with the project. And as we kind of progressed, you know, maybe we would be a good partner to work with, you know, for the production of the user interface module. And it kind of just went from there. Right?
Amazing. And all this happening so quickly in the age of information.
Everything happened so quickly. It was unbelievable. You know, and as the project progressed, any help we needed from other Canadian companies, everybody stepped up, you know, where you typically see, you know, a lead time of whatever 3 weeks, you know, they were dropping whatever they were doing and making the parts that everybody needed. And it was just, the whole process was amazing.
That's
very
fantastic.
impressive, you know, all the companies involved.
Fantastic. Are there a couple of them that you can name, or do they want to remain nameless?
Well, you know, I won't speak to the names. There's a whole bunch of companies that were involved in this project, but the whole process was great.
The point being is that everybody's basically pulled together to make this work.
Oh yeah, big time.
Outstanding. Yeah. So all medical equipment aside, what could we expect to see from Yorkville, maybe coming from the year 2021 and onwards?
In the future products.
Yeah.
Well, you know, okay, so right now, I think we're just in general, we're in a great position, right? So in the last few years, we've really accelerated the development of some key technologies, right? And we've got a lot of good ideas in the works, so I'm not going to spill the beans too much, right?
No, of course not.
We're in a great position to be able to deliver some really exciting products in the next couple of years.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that we've been working with too has been things with wireless capability, obviously.
Yeah, you know, like Bluetooth integration. A lot of things has been a thing, and And there's a lot of projects that we have released recently that have integrated lithium-ion batteries.
Our battery-powered
yeah, that stuff's been a lot of fun too. Yeah,
of course it has.
Yeah.
So still remaining not only relevant but at the cutting edge of things in not only the pro audio industry but also branching out into the medical industry and literally helping people across this country and hopefully around the world.
As best as we can, yeah.
That's amazing. Peter Till, thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to anyone?
No, this has been fun.
Has it?
Yeah.
I'm glad it has, and we'll have to do this again, absolutely.
Absolutely, Dave.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Pete. We really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.